There are a few people in this room that have worked directly with as many publishers as our next speaker. I would venture to say that she has worked directly with thousands of different sites and seen pretty much every kind of positive experience and negative experience that you can have as a digital publisher. And over the last decade, we know that this ecosystem has changed a lot. And so please join me in welcoming one of the smartest women that I know, Miss Piper Lofrano.
Thanks, Tyler. Well, that was a wonderful intro, so thank you for that. Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your time at Google. I know I always have a great time coming here. But more importantly, it's great to finally meet some of the publishers that I've worked with over the last year or multiple years and finally put a face to a name. Robert, hello. So a little bit about me. I actually got my degree in mechanical engineering. So you can imagine the surprise when I told my parents that I was joining a startup in the online publishing industry that had 9 employees. To be honest, I'm not really sure if my parents know exactly what it is that I do. They think it's something involved with the internet, and I feed them a bunch of fancy buzzwords like AI and machine learning to make them feel like paying for my degree was worth it. But in all honesty, there's actually a lot of similarities between what I learned in school and what we do at Ezoic, especially the idea of leveraging technology and data to make smarter decisions. So over the last 5.5 years, I've worked with thousands of publishers, as Tyler said, and I've helped them improve their websites with this idea of machine learning. So before starting today, I want to take a look at how the publishing industry has evolved over the last 10 years. So with a show of hands, who here was in publishing in 2009? Good, quite a lot of you. How about 1999? Oh, the OGs. Nice. So if you were a publisher 10 years ago, life was a lot more simple than it is today. You had to have a basic understanding of SEO, which typically meant writing content that your users could engage with. And most of this could be self-taught. Your monetization strategy probably consisted of an AdSense account. And as you can see, it was very simple. The idea of getting lucky back then was a lot easier. You could write something, throw it online, and before you know it, get a ton of traffic to your website. Now, let's fast forward 10 years to the current day. And if you're a publisher, you have a laundry list of items that you need to be on top of. So is your site GDPR compliant? Do you have an ads.txt file? What's your mobile strategy? Are you using AMP? Are you using PWA? As you can see, there's a lot more that goes into running a website today than there was 10 years ago. However, it's not all that bad. There is a positive to this. So today, more and more people have access to the internet. The number of people using the internet continues to climb year over year, and now over 50% of the world's population has access to the internet. And those people really like digital media. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with a cool gadget called the iPhone. That really revolutionized the way that people engage with content, and now users are spending up to 6 hours a day with digital media. And what this means is that advertisers who used to put their advertising budgets in print or television are now focusing on digital media. So it's more lucrative for publishers now than ever before. So there's a much greater opportunity, but there's also a lot more complexity involved. We surveyed over 2,000 publishers at the beginning of this year, and we asked them what is most important to them. So despite the growing complexity of the ecosystem, what's not surprising is that the majority of publishers are still focused on traffic and revenue, with the majority of them really focusing on traffic with SEO and audience growth, because traffic is the key to sustainability. If you can grow your traffic, you're going to generate more revenue. So what I want to talk about today is how 3 different publishers were able to succeed despite the growing complexity of the online space. So for our first case study, I want to focus on our friends at Apple Toolbox and how they were able to grow their organic traffic. So a little bit of background on Apple Toolbox. The site is run by 2 wonderful people, Amanda and Sudes. They may or may not be my favorite publisher, but don't tell my other clients that. And they had no experience in online publishing prior to buying the website. So Sudes actually had a 15 or 20-year-long career at Southern California Electric Company. And when he found out that Amanda was diagnosed with cancer, he wanted to find something where he could spend more time at home with her. So he had a friend who bought and sold websites and said, Sudes, why don't you buy a website? You can run that from anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection. And there's a lot of money to be had if you're good at it. So they went ahead and bought Apple Toolbox. And when they came to us, one of the things that they wanted to focus on was growing their traffic. So let's take a look at how they did. This is their organic search traffic over the last 2.5 years, and they've been able to increase that by 250%. Additionally, the number of keywords that they rank for, pulled from SEMrush, is higher now than ever before. So how did they accomplish this? Well, we all know that the way that you get traffic to your website is by users searching for certain keywords or terms and then landing on that page to find that content. Now, what you'll do when you do a keyword analysis on your site, as was the case for Apple Toolbox, is that you might be ranking for a lot of these keywords unintentionally. So what that means is that perhaps you wrote an article or a piece of content targeting a certain keyword, but it ends up ranking for additional keywords. So this is completely normal, and it's actually a huge opportunity for you to capitalize on. So let's look at an example. Apple Toolbox is all about Apple products, the iPhone, etc. So let's say that they wrote an article reviewing the latest iPhone. And in that article, they had a section on new features, one of which is this new emoji facial recognition software. I don't know if you guys have used it. It's really funny. So let's say they have a little blurb in there about that, and they find that some users are actually searching for this Animoji feature and landing on that page, but the page wasn't originally written about this feature. It was a general iPhone review. So here's an opportunity for them to go in and improve the content on this feature for users who are searching for that to win more traffic. But they wanted to make sure that their efforts were worthwhile. It's going to take some time to go in and augment your content and add new content, so you want to make sure that those efforts pay off. So when you do this keyword analysis, you might find that you're already ranking in position 1 for a search term. And if you go to that URL and you see that it's a very high quality article with a lot of information and tutorials and images, then there's really not a lot of room to grow. It's not a huge opportunity. Additionally, if you're ranking position 65th for a search term that gets less than 1,000 searches a month, that's not relevant either. You're not going to win much traffic from putting any efforts there. So what we did is we used SEMrush to pull a list of keywords that they were ranking position 6 through position 20. So this typically meant page 2 or 3 of search results. And these keywords were getting over 1,000 searches per month. So the idea here is if they can improve the SEO for those keywords and move it to page 1, they'll win a lot more traffic. Now, Amanda and Sudes were not SEO experts. As I mentioned, they had no experience in the digital publishing industry whatsoever. So they wanted to make sure that when they did this, they weren't going to have any negative impact on SEO. So they wanted to make sure that they were only adding value and adding traffic. So the way that they did this is by augmenting the content. So this means they didn't remove or subtract any content that was originally on the page. Instead, they would go in and identify the keyword that they were targeting. So in this case, the Animoji feature for the new iPhone. And they would add additional headings, add new paragraphs, maybe some new images, a video tutorial on how that feature works, and link to new content or other content on their site. And this way, users who are searching for that keyword are going to come to this page now and find all the information that they need, so they don't need to go to another site to get that information. And any other users who are searching for other keywords on the page are still going to find all that content on this page. So now they're preserving their existing SEO while boosting SEO for those other hidden keywords. So when they did this, they wanted to make sure that they could actually prove an ROI. Luckily, we have a data scientist at Ezoic who put together this SEO ROI Calculator. So what they could do is they could add or input the average volume of the keyword volume for all the keywords they were targeting, input their average current rank for those keywords, the rank that they expected to be in a few months, and then the average ePMV, which is earnings per 1,000 visitors for those keywords. So now they could actually see how much traffic and how much revenue they could increase by going through this strategy. So luckily for you guys, we actually put together a guide to this strategy along with this ROI calculator, and you can find that at ezoic.com/content calculator. So let's take a look at their results. When we started this project, it was November of 2016, and they ranked for 66,000 keywords. Fast forward a year to November of 2017, they ranked for 217,000 keywords. And today, they rank for 350,000 keywords, and they've improved their organic traffic by 250%. So there may be some of you out there thinking, well, this isn't relevant for me. I run a news site or something similar, and this strategy won't work. Well, Search Engine Journal came out at PubCon last year and said that 80% of the articles that won the most traffic in 2018 had been rewritten at some point to better target the users who are searching for that keyword. So it's safe to say that this data-driven approach works for all different types of sites. So my recommendation for everyone here today is to go ahead and do some keyword analysis. You can use SEMrush. That's one that we use. I'm sure there's other tools out there. And then you also have access to our strategy and the ROI calculator, and hopefully you guys can win more traffic like Apple Toolbox did. So for the next two case studies, I want to focus on that other important aspect of publishing, featuring Anita from Small Biz Trends, and how they were able to increase their ad inventory value. So one of the things about ad inventory value is that it's not all about the ad density. And this is especially because of this concept of ad dilution. So before getting into the case study, I want to talk about ad dilution. So let's talk about how advertisers bid on your website. So nowadays, it's pretty much all done programmatically within DFP or Google Ad Manager or whatever they're calling it these days. And it's based on historical data. So looking at how that ad unit on that page performs over time based on click-through rate, viewability, and conversions. So if that space changes over time, any of those metrics, the bids will be automatically adjusted to compensate for those changes. So let's say I run this website, the #1 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu website in the world, Bishop BJJ.
Not #1, but it's pretty close.
Which is actually borrowed from my friend Tyler over there. And I'm getting good traffic, and I put this 300 by 250 ad on my site. And so Google knows that that ad unit typically gets a 1% click-through rate. So there's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu advertiser who wants to bid on my site. It's the perfect location, perfect audience, and they need to sell their product for $100 to see an ROI. So they know that their 300 by 250 ad unit has a 5% conversion rate. So that means they need to get 20 clicks in order to see a return. So Google will tell them that they can bid up to $50 and still see an ROI from their campaign. So if I'm a publisher and I see that I'm getting a $50 CPM, I might want to try and maximize or increase my revenue. So I decide to test a second ad in the sidebar to see how it performs. Now, because the bids are placed on historical data, it's highly likely that I will get an additional $50 CPM for this second ad unit. So now I think, wow, I've doubled the RPM on my page. This is awesome. I'm going to show 2 ads in the sidebar at all times. Unfortunately, all ads have a very strong impact on all the other ads on the page, as well as with user experience. So that 1% click-through rate that I used to get on that one ad unit is going to deteriorate over time, and Google will automatically adjust the bids to compensate for that. So for the sake of simplicity, let's say it cuts the CTR in half. So now I have 2 advertisers bidding $25. So I'm generating the same RPM, but now I've doubled the ads on the page. So this is basically a summary of how all ads dilute one another. So if we want to focus on increasing the ad inventory value, we first need to understand how all the ads on the page interact with one another. And then we also need to understand that all users behave differently. So it could be that for a segment of users, perhaps users from Google search in the United States have really high engagement with a sidebar unit, and they actually have a 2% click-through rate. Whereas other users, maybe from Facebook in the EU, they don't engage with the sidebar unit at all. So wouldn't it make sense for us to pair up the users that have high engagement with the ads in those respective locations? So the answer is yes. So that means we need to incorporate user experience and engagement into our decision-making process of where to show ads on the page. So back to small biz trends. When we first started working with Anita, they were already using Ezioic's Add Tester. So this product tests different ad locations on the page to try and maximize revenue and user experience by personalizing it for each person or each user. And the way that you do this is you add these placeholders to the page, and these are the potential ad locations. So Anita was already testing 1 ad at the top of the site, 2 in the sidebar, 1 within the first few paragraphs of content, and 1 at the bottom of the page. But when we looked into user experience metrics, we found that 70% of visitors are only engaging with the top half of the page. And 30% of users are actually going all the way to the bottom. So now we have a couple different options. If we want to try and maximize for viewability, it would make sense to put all the ads in the top 50% of the page, right? Unfortunately, as we just saw, all ads dilute one another, so you're going to run into a few issues with this. Ad density, that can impact user experience, ad blindness, etc. On the other hand, we don't want to show an ad in the bottom half of the page to all users because we know that only 30% of the users are actually going there. So what we decided to do was to test a few additional placeholders or testing locations in the second half of the page. So what's important about this is we're not adding more ads to the page. Instead, we're adding more of these potential ad locations. So if our system predicted that a user would engage with the second half of the page, it could choose to show an ad there instead of one of the other locations to help improve engagement and viewability. And on the other hand, if it knew the user wasn't going to engage with the entire page, it wouldn't show an ad in that location, thus preserving the viewability. So for users who scrolled to the entire bottom of the page, this proved to be a very valuable ad location. The orange and yellow on this graph represent the additional placeholders. So as you can see, by testing these new locations, our system was able to improve the value and the viewability for the advertiser, and thus increase Anita's overall revenue. So this is an example of how you can combat ad dilution. The real goal here is to integrate user experience into your decision-making process of where to show the ads on the page so that you can get the most value for every ad on the page. I think that this is something that's going to become more important with Google's switch to the first price auction. You need to make sure that the value of the ads on the page is very high for advertisers, and this is one way that you can ensure that. All right, for our third case study, we're going to talk about affordable housing online and how they were able to use visitor segmentation. So I think they're here today. There you are. Hey, guys. So oftentimes I think what happens is publishers think of their traffic as a single unit. So users come to my site. But in reality, all these users are unique. So we did a very simple segmentation that you can do, and we found it to be very impactful for a lot of publishers. And this is by looking at new users versus returning users. So in the case of affordable housing online, we found that new users view about 1.5 pages per session, and returning users are much more engaged and view 4 pages per session, spending about 5.5 minutes on the site. So the question is, should we treat these users the same? So we took a look at how new visitors engaged on the site. So what we wanted to do was test for the ad density threshold. So this is the point at which you can show a certain number of ads without impacting the user experience. So we found that for new users, you can show up to 8 ads per page, and it won't impact the user experience. So if we want to maximize RPM, which is normal protocol, we would show 8 ads per page. These users would view 1.5 pages, giving us $12 for every 1,000 visitors. Now, for returning users, we found that the critical point, so the point at which they bounce, is 8 ads per page. So in this situation, we have 2 options. One, which is normal protocol, optimizing for RPM, we can show 8 ads per page to these returning visitors. However, this is going to cause them to bounce. So instead of viewing 4 pages, they view 1. So we have $8 for every 1,000 visitors. On the other hand, we can optimize for session revenue. So how much we generate from this user coming to the site throughout their entire journey. And what we found is that if you cut the number of ads in half, so you're only showing 4 ads per page, these users are now viewing a total of 4 pages, generating $16 for every 1,000 visitors and doubling your revenue. So what we learned from this is that you can't treat all users the same. If we were to treat the new users the same as the returning users, we would have left a lot of money on the table, and we would have impacted the user experience. But let's take this a step further. We were just looking at the new versus returning, but what if we apply another layer? So now we're looking at the traffic source for these returning users. So what we found is that returning users coming from organic search have more intent. They're more highly engaged. So they're viewing 5 pages per session. Returning users from socials, such as Facebook, are viewing 3 pages per session. So back to our question, should we treat these users the same? So we did more testing, and we found that users from Facebook are less sensitive to the number of ads on the page. So you can actually increase the number of ads for returning users from Facebook to 5 ads per page, and they'll still view 3 pages. So now you've increased your EPMV to 15 from 12. Now, what's interesting for returning users from organic search is that their ad density threshold, or the point at which they bounce, depends on the number of ads on the page and which page view they're on. So what this means is that users who are more engaged, so after they've viewed a few more pages, can actually be shown more ads, but they first have to prove their intent on the site. So in this case, we were able to show returning users from organic search 4 ads for the first 3 pages, and then we could actually increase that to 6 ads for the subsequent 2 pages. So now we've increased the EPMV for these users to $24 for every 1,000 sessions. So now that we've applied this additional layer of breaking down the traffic source and new versus returning, we were able to increase the revenue for returning users 63%. So we just looked at 2 fairly simple visitor segmentations, new versus returning, and then the traffic source. But there's actually hundreds of different data points that you can use when you're looking at your site. So some common ones are geolocation. People engage differently from different countries around the world, even different states or cities. What device they're on, what landing page, etc. But the point of this is really to explain that if you treat all your users the same, you're going to end up leaving a lot of money on the table, but you're also going to impact user experience. So if you give your users what they want, you can maximize both at the same time. So to wrap things up, when I joined Ezoic, I didn't know much about online publishing. And I've had to learn a lot over the years, but one thing that I found is that data is really your best friend. So as we saw in the case with the last 3 case studies, each publisher was able to take data that they had access to help personalize the experience for their users and grow their revenue or traffic. So although the space is more complex now, more than it has ever been in the past, the good news is that you have access to more data than you've ever had before. So going back to what Tyler said, the best way to contextualize data is to leverage technology and other resources. So the good news is everyone here has more opportunities, more tools, more data that they can leverage to help improve their site overall. So thank you everyone for having me. I'm going to be around today and tomorrow, so if you have any questions, come find me.